Now it's time for Glow with Markette Sheppard, a show where talk enlightens and inspires you to glow through life instead of going through the life just to get by. Hosted by Emmy award-winning TV host and best-selling author Markette Sheppard. Listen now for insightful conversations featuring celebrities and thought leaders. Call in to share your story live on air. Are you ready for a glow up? Your journey towards enlightenment starts right now.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Glow with Markette Sheppard. I'm so excited to be joined by divorce attorney, entrepreneur, mother, and wife, Tracey Coates, here in the pink on your screen, or if you're listening, you'll hear her voice, and my beauty expert, Mr. Be Rich Beauty, here to always make you look good, feel good, so you can go out in the world and do good. Welcome, guys, to another episode of Glow.
Hello. Thank you.
Good morning.
Excited to be here.
I'm excited to have both of you here today. Tracey, I want to start with you. You are a part of the GlowStream TV family. We know you as an entrepreneur at Time for Mom, but during this pandemic, I want to talk about your other expertise, and that is being a divorce attorney, because there's a saying going around the internet, you can't spell divorce without COVID, and that spells COVID. So right. What's going on where a lot of people seem to be breaking up because they have been forced to spend so much time together?
You know, you're absolutely correct. I can't think of any of my peers right now who are not swamped with various family law matters at this moment. But I think it's sort of even helpful to go back to where we were when everything shut down in March of 2020. It's been 18 months at this point. And I think when things shut down, we had some different pockets and pools of people. There were my clients and who were in the midst of about to go into a divorce or a custody proceeding, those that were already smack in the middle, and sort of everything just stopped. As everybody knows, the court shut down. They were really only operating for emergency proceedings such as domestic violence or certain custody cases. And so at that time, a lot of people who were being called to us, or, we were dealing with, really had to do with people who already had custody agreements or court orders and trying to figure out, what do I do now? Do I still send, my son or daughter to dad or to mom? What happens in terms of school? Who's supposed to stay home on these days? It was a lot of enforcement proceedings. Support became a big issue in the early months of COVID. And then things just sort of quieted down for a little bit. And now that the courts are, for the most part, up and running, there are some jurisdictions that are still operating exclusively remotely, DC being one of them. People are really now starting to come out of the woodwork, if you will, both those that were quieted during the COVID months, but also those that ordinarily would have gotten a divorce anyway. And so everybody is sort of converging down this funnel, and that is really what's making the explosion of divorce matters a big deal right now.
So when you say funnel, I'm thinking backlog. So for people who are listening, who want a divorce, it may take a little longer than pre-pandemic days. Is that correct?
That is correct. And typically, we can see usually less than 12 months, 9 to 12 months, I would say, to do an entire divorce proceeding from start to finish pre-COVID. I think right now, although we are starting to get up and running and reducing those times right now, but sometimes it was taking at least 6-7 months just to get in front of a judge. And that had nothing to do with any issues, no evidentiary hearings. It was just, this is the first meeting point with the judge and what is going on in your case. And that was taking 6, 7, 8 months. And an actual trial, that was taking anywhere over a year, 13, 15 months just to get things going and concluded.
So you have a good long time to think about, is this what I really want? Let me share with you, Tracey, I'm happily married, and I have learned how to cope with my husband, who I love dearly, but I need space. So he has an office in the basement of our house. I have an office on the top floor. So there's a whole floor in between us. Okay. That helps. And then
Smart woman.
Then I learned I don't go in his office. I don't talk to him unless we happen to have lunch at the same time. Otherwise, it's like, okay, it works if I see you after 5 o'clock, just like our marriage before the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And then like sometimes when I do go out, now that things are opening up, I go out by myself. Like I went and I had lunch at one of my favorite restaurants yesterday by myself. It was just me getting out. It was about me. It was about my self-care, refueling time. Whereas before the pandemic, my husband traveled a lot for work across the country, internationally. So I really didn't get to spend time with him except for weekends. And now I'm realizing we're together 7 days a week. He's still working remotely. I'm working remotely. Weekend is me time because we're in the house together.
Right,
So, so I have adjusted how I wife according to the pandemic, and space is important. It doesn't matter how much you love someone. So after seeing so many cases come through over the past 18 months, what would you say is the number one reason why people say now is the time that they want to leave their union?
That's an excellent question, Marquette. And I think it's a couple of things. I think number one, as you just said, it's lack of space. Home has become office, school, workout center, social activities, you name it, all under one roof, and you're always together. So I think people are really finding that if they don't genuinely like their spouse, that it's creating a little bit of tension between the two of them. I think another case is finances. The COVID pandemic really caused a lot of stress and emotional pull on people's finances, and that has led a lot of couples to find that either they are not able on the same page when it comes to finances, they are stretched thin, or one party has lost his or her income or half of their income, and it really is creating a lot of tension. And I do think also just the roles have been, sort of murky in terms of what people are doing, particularly when we were homeschooling our kids and everybody was home and it was like, well, who is actually going to sit and oversee, your son or daughter do the schoolwork? Who gets to actually have some time to take calls with the office and to do the things that they need to do? And I think that also I'm finding really did stretch some relationships thin.
Absolutely. I just remember when it all happened, it was like a Thursday or a Friday, everything shut down. I was supposed to fly to Miami. My husband was going to take care of my son for the weekend. The office was closed. I was like, what am I going to do with my kid? I was worried about what am I going to do with my kids? And by default, I think this is the story of a lot of women. I became mom, the executive, and the teacher. I mean, it was just me and my son. I was managing things, and my husband was like, I'm not trying to, say anything bad, but he was just like, I'm going in my office and closing the door. And I was like, okay. But when I saw that, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be not only teacher, I'm going to be my son's companion, confidant, and just fill in the gap because I don't want him to be lonely in a house where there are no other children. And that was really, really hard for me. But I was willing to make that sacrifice because my husband has a really long, steady, great career. I know that his company loves him. They show love to him. They promote him. And journalism and media is like a roller coaster. And I said, well, you know what? I'm willing to make the sacrifice because I know what he has in his career. And I, of course, don't want my child to be lonely, but I know other people can feel resentment. They can feel like it needs to be 50-50, and couples need to work that out because in addition to time and money, I'm also hearing that affects people's sex lives. And I also hear that sex and money, that's what really breaks people apart.
No, I think you're absolutely correct. And I too am happily married, knock on wood. We've gotten through the pandemic just fine in terms of, but we've had our own ups and downs, and similar to what you're saying, my husband works for the government, I'm a lawyer. And so there is some flexibility in both our positions, but not necessarily a lot depending on what we have scheduled and going on. And I do think that people really did have to, and oftentimes I'm finding it was a lot of my female clients who were having to manage their careers, having to figure out, how I'm going to homeschool. I know for myself, I have a now 11-year-old and a 6-year-old, completely different worlds apart in terms of where they are academically and in grade level. So on one hand, I'm trying to manage homework and make sure that his learning is still on par with where it needs to be grade level. And then I have a younger one who, has no interest in being in front of a computer or learning, those types of in that academic environment, and having to both educate her, entertain her, and make sure that things are still, continuing to move and get them out of the house if I could, or, planning activities that were COVID safe. And so I do think that all of that, if you don't have a good foundation in your relationship, and quite honestly, I will also say, even if you do, it was tested during COVID, even if your relationship was built on a really solid foundation, and by that I mean being able to be communicative, making sure that your feelings are heard, making sure that your concerns are being heard and told to the other side. Because if that's not the case, you're absolutely right. Resentment came into play. People became very upset with these new rules and roles, I should say. And if they weren't expressed, it really contributed to the meltdown of the relationship in so many different ways.
And as a wife and a divorce attorney, I wonder, like, do you ever see clients come in and it's a communication breakdown? Can you see that it's something that can be solved, and you turn them away and you say, this is a stressful time. Everybody's going through this. Give it another chance. I know you're a good person, Tracey, because I've worked with you before. And so I can imagine there are some divorce attorneys who are just like, I'm going to just make this money, but I know that's not you, So do you ever see the relationship for what it is and encourage people to try to work it out?
That's so interesting that you say that, because that happens both during COVID, really in the height of COVID, before COVID, and even now. And one of the things that people always tend to ask, and I'm assuming they ask it of other attorneys, is, should I get a divorce? And what I always tell my clients or potential clients is that that is the decision I cannot make for you. You have to be ready and know in your heart of hearts that this is what that you want. And so oftentimes I'll say to people, well, you know what? I hear you asking the right questions. I understand that you came in and wanting to seek a divorce, but I'm not hearing from you that that's actually what you want. And so we do have conversations about that. Other things that they can do. Have they sought counseling? Do they need to I had recently interacting with someone, and it was more or less, have the two of you gone outside of your home together and sat down and had a conversation about X? And if not, I think that that's a really good starting point. And if you still feel like you aren't on the same page, then absolutely come back to me and let's talk about what our next steps would look like. But in terms of, making a decision for somebody, a very difficult decision like a divorce, which is so final and has so many lasting effects, not only on the couple, but also if there's children involved, that is something that I always tell people: don't seek anybody else's input as a final resolution to what you want to do in your marriage, because everybody's marriage looks different both on the outside and on the inside. And so I really do think that people need to make sure that they are in an emotional space to make a decision like that, and it's actually what both parties would like.
Ooh, I love that advice. So many times, and I'm guilty of this too. I can't make a decision about big decisions in life, and I'll ask 15 different people, and then I end up even more confused than before I asked at all. And I just remember actually having this conversation with my husband, where he's somebody, he'll think things through until the very end and then just come up with, I'm going to do this. And I'm like, really? And then he executes on it very, rather quickly. And he explained to me that he's the type of person where he works things out in his head and he doesn't ask for other people's opinions, where I'm the opposite. And where we came together was, okay, since I'm your wife, you do have to tell me what you're thinking about, before you just go
by default, right?
And do something. Yeah. Like I'll just something really, I guess, innocuous. I had all this like mulch being delivered to my house and like landscaping. And my neighbors were walking by and they were like, what are you guys doing? And I said, I don't know. I don't have a clue. And they were like, okay. And it's like, okay, so what are we doing with the yard? Which is fine, because I by no means want to be out in the yard. I'm more of an inside person, not an outside person. But, I think that communication, but then also going back to the serious subject here, relationships, is when you have something going on in your relationship, work it out with yourself first. Like, are you loving yourself? Is your spouse loving himself or herself? Are you loving each other? Are you respecting each other? Nobody can tell you that, because when the doors close, right, and the lights go out at night, it's just you and your partner in your relationship.
Exactly. I mean, I think you summed it up very nicely in terms of it is one thing to seek advice from friends and just to get a perspective. I mean, I think that that's human nature. I think that that's normal. But I think sometimes people do rely on other people's advice and perception of what they know a relationship to be from the outside, and really have no idea the inner workings on the inside. And of course, depending upon who you're asking, I mean, if you're asking your best friend, of course, 9 times out of 10, your best friend is going to side with you, or they're going to see more of your side of a particular situation than not. And so I do think that you can't solely rely on other people who, as you just said, at the end of the day, it's just the two of you. And so if the two of you feel that your relationship is worth salvaging, or you feel the complete opposite, that you know what, it's time to say goodbye, it's time to let go, you can still do that in a very loving way that doesn't necessarily have to turn into, for lack of a World War III. And I think sometimes also when it's fueled by other people's judgment and perceptions of a particular relationship, that adds fuel to the fire that doesn't necessarily need to be there. And I think that it makes things that much more difficult than just allowing people to get to a point in their relationship where they are either in it for, the long haul, and they'll just deal with the ups and downs. It reminds me of one of my favorite Luther Vandross songs. And one of the lines is, I'd rather have bad times with you than good times with anyone else. And it's that, it's that sentiment that you've got to be either all in and get through those difficult times like COVID had shown us, or you also need to both know, I think that we've tried. I think that we've given it, as much attention and nurture that we can. And now I think it's time for both of us to love ourselves enough to let go.
Love yourself enough to let go. I've definitely been around couples where they walk into a room, you can feel the tension. They don't say anything. They are speaking to each other and you're like, something is off. There is energy out there, and you spoke very briefly at the beginning about domestic violence being on the rise. I was reading in the LA Times that, record numbers of people were going to shelters because partners and families were in the same house at the beginning of the pandemic. And if that household was prone to domestic violence, verbal or physical abuse, it just went up under the stresses of the pandemic. For me, that would be a deal breaker. What would you say, in your expert attorney opinion, would be a reason where, let's just take a woman, for instance, should leave and not look back?
I think I'm with you, domestic violence against her or her children. And so I do think that that is the level of abuse, both intimate partner abuse as well as against children, have dramatically increased over COVID. And at some points, I have heard and have experienced from clients that, in certain situations that, kids necessarily, because they weren't going to school, and having the daily monitoring of a teacher or some sort of overseer who sort of looked out for a child, that it was much harder to track when these children weren't being cared for properly, whether they weren't, receiving food regularly, and whether they were witnessing these acts of domestic violence against their one of their parents or another sibling. And I do think that if you are in a situation where your life is in peril, or you feel that your children's lives are being threatened, it is absolutely time to move on, and you need to go and get help. And so the flip side of what I was saying earlier, in terms of you're either all in or you're not, I do think that your pride cannot be such that you don't seek the help that you need. And I do think that people, unfortunately, women oftentimes stay in relationships for reasons other than that it's going well, for financial security, for perceptions from their friends. And that includes, unfortunately, verbal and physical abuse by their spouse or significant other. And in those situations, I mean, you've got to definitely, talking about loving yourself, you've got to love yourself. And if you have kids, and if you can't do it for yourself, do it for them. Do it for them so that they are not, perpetuating the cycle of domestic violence, so that they are not internalizing what they think a healthy relationship should look like. Kids are resilient and they will bounce back, but at the same time, they're sponges and they take in everything, even if it's not directed to them.
Absolutely. We are live on the Contact Talk Radio Network, and we are able to take your questions. If you're listening out there, if you're in a relationship, if you're out of a relationship, and you just want some expert advice, a second opinion, or maybe you just need some support, call in. The number is 844-390-8255. That's 844-390-8255. Tracey, we have someone from the Glowstream TV family listening in right now with a question. I'd love to bring him up. Brandon Richardson, also known as Mr. Be Rich Beauty. How are you doing this Monday?
Good Monday morning. I'm great. I'm not married, completely all the way single. It's just me, Jesus, and everybody else, right? All the friends in my head. But my question to you, Tracey, is because, obviously you said you're married and you're a divorce attorney, and you listen to a lot of people with a range of circumstances as it relates to marriage and wanting to uncouple. How do you kind of reset? Because I feel like you're now the therapist for couples going through hard times, and there's only so much you can absorb each day before it starts to kind of cloud and impact you. So how do you digest it, expel it, reset, so that way you're not bringing that into your household?
Oh, I love that you're thinking about my interests, Brandon. Thank you.
Self-care is so well-rounded. We all have to think about self-care, and especially in the time of COVID, where we're living and working in the same space. I'm really curious to know, how do you maintain?
I think most days I am able to do that, because one of the reasons why my clients hire me is to be an impartial third party. So I'm not necessarily in bed with their problems and their issues, and I'm able to sort of look at it objectively and not be emotionally involved. But there are definitely times that it gets to me. And I remember one such time, I called one of my partners, who in a lot of ways is one of my mentors, and I was just unhinged about what had just happened to my client, and it just didn't seem fair.
Right.
And one of the things that he said to me, and he's been practicing for a very long time, and he said, well, he's a kid, did you do everything that you knew that you could do for your client? Were you prepared? Did you do X, Y, and Z? I said, absolutely. And he said, then then you've done all you can do. Go home to your family, have a good weekend, and take care of the children and family that you have. And so I really do sort of live by that. This was many years ago in terms of, I can't let it roll into my personal life. And I do oftentimes completely shut everything out. I mean, there are times when I am swamped with work, but I also have to be the wife, the mother, the friend on,
Yeah.
outside of work. And I think it's so important that you really do need to reset, let go, and not think about it. And one such ways that I also do that, quite honestly, is I don't give out my personal cell phone number to clients. I typically don't give out my cell phone number to opposing counsel, because I have had the experience when I get the calls at 10, 11 o'clock at night and I'm outside on the front porch having to deal with these issues that, not to make light of it, it's an emergency for them, but in the grand scheme
Right.
of things, is not necessarily an emergency that can't be dealt with during normal business hours. And so I do think it's really important to sort of draw that line a lot of the times. And I'm all in. When I'm all in, with a client, during their trials, during preparation, even during the week, it's one thing, but I can't necessarily give to my family, which is my priority, 24 hours a day if I'm always, on call, if you will, for clients.
Yeah,
I
absolutely. I
love
believe in
that.
a good separation of church and state.
Yes, I just changed my cell phone number 2 years ago when I left my last job because people were texting, calling holidays, and it was very public. So people feel close to you, and I'm like, can I get Mother's Day off, guys?
Right.
So I love that you have such a healthy balance, like Brandon said, of separation of church and state. I'm going to ask a question for my good friend Brandon, who is a great catch, and I'm sure will someday get married. And I'm protective of Brandon, okay? He has a lot going for himself. He lives in a beautiful high rise in Miami. He used to travel the world as a makeup artist, right, before the pandemic, and you'll get back to traveling. And Brandon has a lot to offer, right? So when you have someone like that who's single and has established themselves in their lives, how do you protect their assets, right? I'm asking for Brandon.
Great question.
I got married with not even a complete towel set. So we didn't have any, prenup. We got towels, we got a dining room table together, but Brandon's got it going on.
I got towels.
You have to, I know you do.
But yes, honey, I got all the investments, champagne flutes for days. So what you got for me?
Exactly.
So how do we protect Brandon when he finds the love of his life? Because I just think after a certain age and after so many accomplishments, you should have some type of shield.
Absolutely.
In the form of a prenup. I mean, what do you think, Tracey?
I agree. And Markette, I'm only laughing because I was like you. My husband used to tease me. He's like, do you have more than one complete set of sheets that we can use on a bed? And I'm like, no, just got these one really nice ones. So I had nothing too. But for people who are like Brandon, who have established themselves, who have assets that they want to protect, I think it's always such a good idea to go into a relationship protecting yourselves, hoping for the best, as they say, but also planning for the worst. And so one of the things that I do, which is sort of the happier part of my job, is prepare prenuptial agreements for people, because I do think most times that anything you bring into the marriage is going to stay your separate property, excuse me, but things accumulated during the marriage are going to become marital property. And so if it is lopsided, and sounds like, Brandon, in your situation, it would be, because you have already done all the things and accumulated all the stuff.
Oh, but Brandon's not going for broke. I can just tell you that right now. He's going to find somebody at his level or higher.
Hello.
But
Thank you, Markette.
even still, I have no doubt. But even still, I do think that it does help when both sides are really trying to focus on, obviously a wonderful relationship, but making sure that what they've worked really, really hard to acquire up until that point, either number one, you have a conversation about it and you agree that this is not, we're okay. We're not going to do the prenup. I don't advise that, But as long as you have a conversation and you're both on the same page, that's, half the battle. But what I think the more prudent strategy would be is for each of you to find attorneys to go through what your assets are, what you're each bringing into this relationship, and what's expected during the relationship, meaning who's going to pay the bills, who is going to save. Are you putting all of your money into one joint account? Are you putting a percentage of it into an account? What happens to retirement assets in terms of, how much you accumulated versus what the other person has accumulated, with real estate in terms of rental income property? I mean, there's so many things to think about depending on what assets you have, that it really makes a lot of sense for that discussion to be had and for a prenup to be drafted.
So what do you think, Brandon?
Well, first of all, I heard you. I made all the notes. So that way, when I find the love of my life, then they know that I'm coming in with my big old yacht, like this is my property. But, I wanted to ask one more follow-up question. I think that's so important that you went down into details about, like rental property and very specifics. Do you find that within like the Black community, we have more trouble with having those types of conversations? Because even as you were getting all down into like the nitty gritty, I kind of broke out in like a light little sweat. I was like, oh God, this is so complicated. It was making me start to kind of like schwitz over here. So what do you find that, those conversations are a little harder to have within the Black community?
I think that they are. And unfortunately, I think some of it stems from the fact that we're a lot of first generational wealth into some respect. Our parents and grandparents didn't have the same level necessarily of financial success that we're having today. And so I think those conversations didn't really need to be had. And so I think that it is a little bit tougher for people to have those conversations or just dismiss it as that's something we don't do. But I do say that a lot of my clients, particularly, the more sophisticated clients, regardless of race, they are having those conversations because they have acquired a level of wealth and a level of assets. And I'm not even talking so much necessarily like millions and millions of dollars. But even if you've got the yacht that you're bringing in, Brandon, or the high rise in Miami, you need to have that protected. It's yours. You worked hard for it. You sacrificed for it. So why should, in the unfortunate event that you get a divorce or separated from your spouse, that you lose all of that? I don't think that that's how generational wealth gets passed on, by holding on to your own and making decisions, intentional decisions about what happens to those assets.
I love this. Protect your assets. And I just remember this scene from the Real Housewives of Atlanta where Candy was going to get married to Todd. And it was like very close to the wedding. And she was just like, as soon as he signs the prenup, we can get married. But it was just like, she didn't even blink. It was that serious. And then there was this NBA player who the wedding was called off recently. I can't remember his name. They had a child together, but the NBA player, his fiance, didn't sign the prenup. And I guess she thought he was joking because they had the child together. Google this. And he didn't show up to the wedding and they lost all the money. And it was just like, y'all need to talk, okay? Because this is getting out of hand. But, so many of us are first generation, so much. First generation college grads, first generation millionaires, if you will, or business owners. And it's like, where do you go? Where do you go to get this good information? Well, I'm glad if you're listening, I'm glad that you're here on Glow with Markette Sheppard.
Tracey,
that's right. Tracey Coates. Brandon, we're talking heavy here. And I know that you're all about making people feel good and look good, because after the divorce, Tracey, I'm sure a lot of your clients get makeovers. They want to get back out on the market or just make themselves feel brand new. Is that true for you?
That's so true, truth. And even, even during, not just afterwards, even during, I mean, that sometimes helps sort of move things along. When you feel good, you make different decisions about things in life. And so if I knew Brandon was going to be on today, I would have made a decision to maybe add some more makeup today, or to have called him and walked me through it. But yes, absolutely. I do think that, that when you look good, you feel better about yourself.
So Brandon, what's your advice to Tracey's clients who they're saying, Tracey, I want to look good for my court date. I want him or her to see what they are missing.
That ties into Makeup Monday on glowstreamtv.com. We talked about finding the perfect red, right? So, for us going into the fall season, and, red is an all year round thing, but going into like the fall holiday season, the winter season, red just feels a lot more festive, a lot more commanding. And, red is a power color. So I always tell people, if you're wanting to go and make a statement, whether it's a soft statement or a very loud statement, wear your best red. And so on glowstreamtv.com today, I'm walking you guys through different types of reds for different types of occasions. So whether it's executive realness and you're doing Zoom calls, virtual meetings, or you're the person on the go and you need a lip color that's going to last and last, I'm helping you find your perfect red today on glowstreamtv.com. So I like a good red. I think that's something where if you want to go into like I said, that courtroom or the meeting room to try to hash out these prenup terms, you wear your power red, sugar.
I love that. Okay, so I did see the blog post. It's very good. You have lots of options. So I usually wear neutrals. I put on Ruby Woo for you, which I know is an iconic red color at MAC Cosmetics.
I love that color though, because it works on so many different complexions. And so, now if you love Ruby Woo, it's now called Ruby's Crew. They're adding multiple formulas with the same color of Ruby Woo. So if you need something that's going to be hydrating, they got you. If you need something that's going to be long wearing liquid, it's all coming in all shapes and sizes and forms, which I love.
Okay, make sure you check it out. Brandon, you are so wonderful. You're making everybody look good every Monday on glowstreamtv.com. You're also on Instagram. Tell us your Instagram.
It's at BeRichBeauty. So at BeRich_beauty on Instagram.
Why'd you make it complicated, Brandon?
Underscore. It's so easy, right? And it's the same thing on all the platforms. So even on the Twitter, it's BeRich_beauty, and on YouTube, BeRichBeauty. Super easy to find me. Everywhere.
Can I ask a question, Brandon? Can anybody wear, in your experience, can anybody wear red? That to me is it looks fantastic on Markette, but it's just a color that I know myself and some of my friends are like, oh, I don't know if I can pull off red.
So absolutely. It's all about coverage and maybe the intensity of the red, right? So if you're a newbie to red, I always say start with a little bit more of a lighter coverage, like sheer to medium. So that way it's not already like full Monty out the gate, like big and bold. And then once you do that, you can kind of like gradually build your coverage or your brightness of your red as you get more comfortable wearing red, right? So sheer to medium to start out, maybe medium if you want to, go out for the day, and then something really vibrant, bold for something that's in the evening, like a day out, a date night with the husband or a fundraiser or a holiday party. You go a little bit brighter and bolder because it's to say something red,
Yeah, thank you.
What if you want to crush it in court, Brandon?
What if you want to crush it in court? I say go matte because you're going to be talking, or liquid. So that way you don't have to worry about touching it up. And I would say go for the medium. Give us the executive realness, like the lawyer realness. So that's going to be like medium coverage, a nice vibrant, maybe like a candy apple red, and that way you can kind of like not distract everybody, but get your point across.
Note and taken. Thank you.
I love it. And Brandon Tracey actually gave me this Ruby Woo lip color, and I was afraid of red for many years. And then I started reading about how in cultures, red is that power color, and you wear red and you put on red to center your power. And I said, okay, I'm going to do this. Ain't nowhere to go but up with this red lipstick on. So I encourage you to check it out. Tracey, if you're listening, check Brandon's new post out. It just posted this morning on glowstreamtv.com. And now, Brandon, I hope you can stick around. I know you're very busy. You dip out.
I'm here. You got
You're
me.
here for it.
I got some more tea if you need it too. I'm here for it.
You have some tea?
Oh, I got some tea. Did you not hear about did you not hear about Kelly Price?
Okay, wait, let's talk about this. Okay,
let's talk about this.
Brandon also has Brandon's Matcha on YouTube. Google it. It's fabulous. We get all of the reality show tea, which is full of strained relationships. What's going on with Kelly Price?
Oh, the kids said Kelly was missing. They found a missing report for her. And now Kelly had to come out of whatever closet she was hiding in and do an interview with TMZ because it got so serious. Like her sister went on like Larry Reid Live saying that, you can't believe everything that's coming from Kelly Price's lawyers and the boyfriend. And she was really kind of making it like a whole hostage situation. And, Kelly did an interview with TMZ and basically she said she doggone near died with COVID. And so she's fine, but she's recovering. And she said, in order for her to recover, she had to remove herself from all the chaos and noise because her husband got COVID. And by the way, are you guys familiar with like, I think it's called like long-term COVID? Have you guys heard of that phrase?
The long haulers, is that right?
Long haulers, yes.
Oh my God, I have not heard about that. Kelly said she was sick for a few weeks before she ended up going to the hospital with COVID. So once she got to the hospital, she said she flatlined. The doctors had to bring her back. She said she was discharged then shortly after because they needed hospital beds. And so when she was home trying to recover, she said fans and people were just showing up to her house nonstop. Like her doorbell was being rang constantly. She could not get her peace. So she said, I had to remove myself off of social media. I had to find me someplace else to try to heal. And that's why people thought I was missing. But she said she's fine. And she also said, don't believe the sister because she and the sister didn't have a really close relationship. And she hasn't even seen her sister aside from the pandemic for over a year. And the last time she saw her sister was at the funeral. So it sounds real dramatica to me, child.
Wait. Let's back. First of all, I have two sisters. You can believe one, you can't believe the other. So I'm like, if one of my sisters say anything about me, don't believe it. But if my other sister says something about me, it's okay. I totally get that. For the audience who's listening, who's watching on Facebook, Kelly Price, the gospel singer, has had a really wonderful and beautiful career in music. But in the background of all of that, she has always been public about her health problems. Yes. She was severely overweight. I would say morbidly overweight. Earlier part of her career. She did get gastric bypass. She's managed to maintain her weight, but this COVID hits people with weight and health issues in a more severe, impactful way. So I'm glad to hear that Kelly Price is doing well. She was trending on Google this weekend, but the daughter said, you're right, the daughter said she's missing. You said there was a funeral. What funeral did she not talk to her sister at, Brandon?
Her mother's funeral. I guess the mother passed away. She said the last time she saw her sister was at her mother's funeral. And she goes, I don't really talk to my sister that often. We have a strained relationship. And so, she also mentioned, because you brought up the daughter, she goes, her youngest daughter is 27 years old. And she said, unfortunately, I feel like my daughter got manipulated and caught up in all of this because she said people knew where I was that were treating me, but obviously they couldn't speak out because of HIPAA. But she said there were other family members that knew where she was. So she felt like her daughter may have gotten kind of caught up in the whirlwind of the confusion, but she says, I'm fine. She does have some rehabilitation to do. And she did say that because she says she suffered a lot of internal damage during her hospitalization and trying to fight COVID, but she says she's fine. Now, TMZ asked the one question I thought about. TMZ said, to her lawyer, they said, was she vaccinated? And her lawyer refused to specify whether or not Kelly Price was vaccinated or not.
Sip that tea. If you're watching, you see Brandon sipping his matcha. Tracey, sounds like they need a lawyer to do a gag order on Kelly Price.
Some family, exactly.
And let me know who you recommend. I might just do a preemptive one on my sister. Can we just turn this on a positive note? Tracey, I think the world of you. You did such a really heart of your mom and your sister, Laura Coates, who is a TV personality on cable news. And I just thought, wow, your mom has raised two successful daughters in high-powered careers like law, which takes smarts and commitment and tons of education. Can you impart any wisdom to our listening audience who may have sister drama like me and Kelly Price on what it was like growing up in a household that produces rock stars like yourself and Laura?
Oh, well, thank you. Although I do have to say, there's actually three of us. All three of us are lawyers. And my sister, you're right, is a legal analyst for a cable news show. But my other sister is a high-powered partner at a law firm in Minneapolis. So so very proud of both of them. And, like any other family, we have very strong personalities. We're very, very much alike in so many ways, but we're also very different in other ways. And so I think one of the things that people would say a lot about the three of us is our parents really raised us to be very independent. Our parents still reside in the Minneapolis area, but we have always sort of left the nest and spread our wings, and they encouraged that for us to live our lives and to be what we wanted to be or didn't want to be. There was really no pressure on what we wanted to do with our lives. It just so happened that we all ended up in the same career, but we have our moments. I look at Laura sometimes, especially, and I think I see her on TV, and I'm like, gosh, that's such an intelligent, articulate woman. I love it. And then I get on the phone with my little sister, and I'm like, and then it's the little sister back and forth. So, it's great. And we're no different from any other family in terms of our ups and downs. Luckily for us, as we've gotten older, especially, there are many more ups than there are downs. We love each other dearly. So it's a lot of fun.
And let's shout out your little sister. I didn't know you had another sister. I just knew you and Laura. So let's shout out, what's her name? And let's
her
send
name
some love.
is Jennifer Coates. She's actually in between Laura and I. Laura is the youngest. Laura and I are 6 years apart, and my sister Jennifer and I are 4 years apart. So Jennifer and her family live in right outside of Minneapolis. Her husband's also a lawyer, and so it's just one of those things that we have all. Our kids are around the same age, so it's really fun having grown up in such a tight knit family, but also now having our children be as tight. Laura and I literally live in the same neighborhood. Our kids are at the bus stop in the morning together. So it's great.
That's awesome. Now, what do you tell your children? I thought about doing a segment called Glow Kids, and I asked my son about it, and he said, you have no idea what you're doing, mommy. So I said, okay, I'm not putting you on the radio. But it's very important for me as I speak to adults, and I try to encourage and inspire them to not just go through life, but to glow through life. I really want to instill that in my son and know that he has a strong foundation in his home. And like you said, your parents encouraged you to be independent. I was so independent, and I'm so glad I was. I went out, I worked from 15 years old. I know the value of $1. I know how to you can plot me in any city in the world, and I know how to take care of myself. And I think that has contributed to my stability as an adult. What do you say to your children to make sure that they follow in the footsteps of their mom and their amazing aunts?
That's been a really interesting balance. And I don't know if you're finding it too, Markette, in terms of, I think our kids today, or the generation today, they are not as used to having to do a lot on their own. And so part of what I think our teachings to them are the fact of hard work, that you've always got to make sure that you are doing your part in life, that you don't take things for granted, that you are not only a smart person, or really my son's extremely good in basketball or these little niche areas, but you've got to be a good person. You've got to be, stick up for your friend in class, or for one of the things that my sisters and I absolutely do is family is first. No matter what, family is first. That is your sisters, that is your brothers, that is your cousins. That is your first priority always in life. My husband and I, and my parents used to say this to us as well. We are not always going to be here, but you all need to be able to take care of each other, to be mentors for one another, and to be confidants. And also, when one person is not acting up and they're not doing the right thing, you need to say something and make sure that you've taken them under their wing, especially the older cousins, to make sure that you're all sort of progressing through life at your highest potential. And so that is one thing that we constantly instill in our kids, that they have got to not only take care of themselves, but take care of each other as well.
Family first, says the divorce attorney. You heard it here first. Try to save that family union. I couldn't agree more. And Brandon, you are such an essential part of my family and the Glowstream TV family. Do you have any words of advice and wisdom too, as Tracey is talking about family and being a good person? That doesn't make the headlines. You can get it here, but it doesn't make it everywhere.
I agree. But, I think it comes from the practice also. So you can say family first, but giving clear examples of what that looks like, right? So it's ensuring that if you want to build those bonds, that your children have time with their cousins, whether it is, during the summertime or Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving for me is a huge family holiday on my dad's side of the family. And it's one of the things that we actually look forward to every year, where conversations will start in like August and September of like, all right, who's coming this year? So, but because it's been like that as a kid growing up, you come to expect it. It becomes second nature. And those are the bonds. So I say, like, if you're going to, really reiterate the importance of family, making sure that that quality time happens, that you provide activities for those things to happen. So that way, as your children get older, those brothers, those sisters, those cousins, those bonds stay true and hold tight.
I think that's so important too, to make that note and put an exclamation mark on it, because we started the conversation talking about breakups, but ending on family. And when you raise your children in a healthy environment and they know what good family looks like, they will go out in the world, I truly believe, and expect that from their partners and their friends, and then the people who will become family later on in life. You got to give people a sampling of what it's like to be good, or in some cases they won't know, or they'll have to teach themselves through trial and error.
We use that as a baseline on how we interact and we love with other people out in the world. So when you're able to give people your children that example, they now have it built into their DNA on how to show up in love, right? So
good, so true.
I love that. We have 3 minutes left in the show. I want to tell people, Tracey, where they can find you online to find out what you're up to and follow your divorce chronicles and your entrepreneurial endeavors.
Thank you. I do have a podcast, The Tracey Coates Show, which is gearing up for its next season in the next couple of weeks. You can find me on Instagram, and I am Tracey Coates, or Time for Mom. And soon you will be able to find me at Coaching with Tracey Coates, because I am starting to incorporate life coaching, which has been so inspirational to me, and so I want to start to give that back to others. And of course, you can find me at Paley Rothman, where I'm a partner in Bethesda, Maryland.
Love it. And Brandon, where can people find you, find your matcha, and find your Makeup Mondays?
Absolutely. Find me on YouTube, Be Rich Beauty on YouTube. You'll find matcha, you'll find Makeup Mondays. I'm also at glowstreamtv.com. Instagram, BeRich_beauty, and Twitter, BeRich_beauty. I think that's it. Oh, I'm on the TikTok. I keep forgetting that.
You're on TikTok?
I'm on the TikTok. The TikTok. I sound like I'm 95. BeRich_beauty on the TikTok.
I love it. I love it. And I love your impeccably moisturized face. I don't know what type of, we'll do a whole moisturizer episode next time, guys. Thank you so much for listening and for watching on Facebook. I'm Markette Sheppard. The show is Glow with Markette Sheppard. You can follow me anywhere where there's Instagram or Facebook. I'm there. You can Google me. But the most important thing is, first, you take care of yourself. You love yourself, right? You fill your cup up, because when you're full of yourself, then you can overflow and pour into others. And that's what this podcast is all about. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes. You go to glowstreamtv.com and you come back next week for another exciting, and take care, guys.